Welcome to the Geek podcast, where BJ is back. He's jet-lagged, and unfortunately his internet is broken. So tonight you get one of those rare mini episodes from just one of us. I didn't have time to line up somebody because it just broke right before we were going to record. So I'm Void, and I'm the Geek podcast today, and we're just going to do a mini episode really quick. But BJ is back, so next week we are probably going to be talking about international travel, since he just did that for a while. And then I'm assuming we'll probably have a catch-up episode too, because I'm looking at my Geekery, and I have a ton. I'm going to talk about some of it right now, but mostly it's stuff that I want to talk about with him. So I'm going to save most of it. That being said, I do want to talk about Spider-Man some more because I beat Spider-Man. Like after the episode that we recorded, I played Spider-Man for another couple days and I beat it and I platinumed it within a week after that episode. I think it only took until that weekend, actually. And it was so good. Like that game, it sticks the landing. And I didn't know if it would, but it really did. And one of the funny things that happened near the end, because my kids were watching parts of it with me, was that my son, after he saw like the last couple scenes, which I'm not going to spoil for you, but he said, why didn't he just call the Hulk? Because in his mind, the Marvel universe is one universe, which, I mean, that's not a bad thing to think when you're 6. And he was just like, why wouldn't he just call the Hulk to help with that big, like, final boss, the end boss? Like, why would you try to do that on your own? But with that being said, I would love to see them, like, wrap more Marvel characters in. I mean, after hearing how well Spider-Man is doing on PS4, I would not at all be surprised if they immediately got greenlit for a second one, and they might be able to expand that license a little bit now that they've proven themselves as like a good company and like something that can make money and generate revenue. It'll be interesting to watch. But like Act 3, it really sticks the landing. I don't want to say much more beyond that because, you know, spoilers, but like there's a good story there. And I want more from this team. And that's not something that I always feel after a game. A lot of the times I'm done and I'm glad I beat it and I have thoughts about a game. But like, I'm legitimately excited for the DLC for Spider-Man. And that's not something that happens to me very often. Usually I'll finish a game and then DLC is such a ways off that I'm like, I'll probably never go back to that. But I want excuses to come back to this game. I mean, I platinumed it. So I'm kind of like out of things to do and I want more things to do. So I'm going to keep this one on my hard drive and I'm going to buy the DLC as soon as it comes out. They're also supposedly patching in a New Game Plus, so I'll grab that. I think that one might be free. Even if it's not, I'd probably pay for it. Don't tell them that. But I'm going to get this DLC right when it comes out and I'm going to go back to it. I think there's one coming out in October and then there's one that's like further down the line, but I can't wait to get back to it. Another thing that I just needed to say about this game, that now that I've seen the whole thing, is that this does some origin stories, and I know sometimes origin stories bug me, but I think the difference that makes me like them in this game is that they aren't Peter's origin story. It's not like the origin of the main hero of the media that I'm consuming. That probably makes all the difference to me, because if it's like the same retelling, like if he got bit by a spider again and like, I don't know, I can't do that. But, you know, when they talk about Miles Morales, when they talk about Doc Ock, and like they have arcs to get them there, and it's interesting to watch because it's not the same origin story that I've seen a million times for Peter Parker. So I think that's the difference. But in general, I really like Spider-Man, and I'm so glad that I played it, and I just devoured that game. So more to come on that when the next round of it comes out, basically. I also finally got around to watching Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and it's not nearly as good as the first Jurassic World, but there were still dinosaurs. Like, it's kind of, it was what I was expecting. You know, after doing that whole episode with my wife and like hearing what to expect, it was basically what I was expecting. I think in the end, it's a lot more of just a setup for Jurassic World 3. And I think I'm more interested in that than I was for the premise of Jurassic World 2. I don't know. I'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. We'll see if it even gets greenlit, because I don't think this one did super well at the box office. But I mean, if Jurassic World 3 comes around and it is what they set it up to be, I think I'm interested. I think I'll pay some attention there. But I mean, it was worth seeing once. It's not one that I'm going to go back and rewatch over and over. Another thing that I checked out this week is Wolverine: The Long Night, which was like an exclusive for a little bit, but now it's coming out weekly for free for everybody. So all of us can go out there and get it for free. It is a Wolverine fiction podcast, basically. I think it's Marvel's first podcast ever. And it's a fiction like ensemble cast. It's a really interesting framing device because it's not just about Wolverine. It's not like an X-Men superheroes podcast. It's definitely about, it almost has a like a true crime feel. It's not quite that, but it's like these two agents that are investigating things that are happening in Alaska, and we know as the audience, right, dramatic irony, that like Wolverine is involved somehow. I mean, the whole podcast is titled Wolverine the Long Night. Like, we know that he's involved, but they don't know who he is. Nobody really knows who he is. And it has that like solving a mystery, putting the pieces together feel to it. So it's these two federal agents and then, the local police there helping them out too. And it's kind of like following them around as they put the pieces together. There's like a cult that's kind of in town that's like adjacent to the town, but not evil necessarily. And then there's murders and disappearances, and somehow Wolverine is involved. And there's only like 2 or 3 episodes out right now, but it's enough to give me a taste to be very interested in it. And this is one that I'll probably bring up again next week because I want to hear what BJ thinks of it. But I just wanted to throw it out there so that if you guys hadn't realized that it came out yet, because it, like I said, originally it started as premium and you had to pay, or it was exclusive or something. It's not that anymore. So if you were waiting, you can go get Wolverine the Long Night right now, and you can check it out and listen to a couple episodes before I bring it up again next week and talk to BJ about it. I also wanted to bring up the PlayStation Classic, which looks kind of interesting, but it's one of those things that like it got announced, and as excited as I was for like the NES Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic, something about the PlayStation Classic doesn't really do it for me. I totally respect you if it does. I can see that, and I know that there's somebody that it appeals to, but there's something about like the earliest 3D style of video games that just hasn't aged as well as other things. Like early 2D games have aged pretty well, especially once you get up to like better sprites, and like the 16-bit era, like those have aged really well. And if you look ahead to like even the PS3, like the Xbox 360 generation, like those are aging pretty well. People are remastering those, people are going back to those games, they're making them backwards compatible, and there are reasons to do that because there are good games there. There's something about this just like earliest PlayStation era that just doesn't do it for me anymore. And I don't know, the games just, they haven't aged all that well. And I think it comes down to that. The other problem that I have with this one is the controller. They're not doing any of the DualShock controllers. So that means, and if you don't know the difference here, I don't blame you, but the earliest PlayStation did not have analog sticks on it. It was just the D-pad and the buttons, and that's what they went back to. I wish they had, like, I know that that's more true to the earliest PlayStation, and they're calling it a classic. I just wish that they had stepped it up to that very first, like, DualShock model, and I don't even remember if it was called DualShock to start out. I think it was. But the first one with analog sticks on it, so that you can just do more and have more games on that system, it feels like they're limiting themselves. I think if they keep going here and they did like a PS2 classic, I might be more interested. But again, it's still kind of that like earlier generation of games. And at some point, it feels like I want them to just kind of like either, if it's a good enough game and it's 3D, remaster it and bring it to a new system, or just make it available on PSN. I feel this way about Nintendo games too. I wish they would just like bring them all to the current system. I could get them on Switch or whatever, but there's something to be said for like Nintendo nostalgia and like early 16-bit, early 8-bit nostalgia. It's different than moving up to that 32-bit, and like, I don't know. We'll see how I feel if they come out with that N64 classic in the next year or two. I might feel different, but I don't know. I might have the same reaction. We'll have to kind of wait and see. The last thing that I wanted to mention really quick was that the Captain Marvel trailer came out in the last week, and I'm interested in that movie. I'm very interested to see where they go with it, and just to see like, I don't know, that character is fascinating because it wasn't really a big character, and I mean, it is more lately, but for a long time, and again, I'm not like a super comic history buff, it's just, they reinvented that character. It used to be like an alien, and then they gave the powers to Miss Marvel, who became Captain Marvel, and then something happened with her memories. I don't know. I really didn't know what to expect from the movie version of it, but now that I've seen the trailer, I'm like, okay, this is something different and it's interesting, and I'm definitely going to go see it because I'm just interested in it. I'm also fascinated to find out how it ties into Infinity War, because it's like the only real one set, well, it's not even set after Infinity War, but it's more of a direct tie-in, it feels like, than Ant-Man and the Wasp was. So we'll have to see. I mean, it's definitely set up to be a standalone story, but we all know that it's got to tie back in because that end credit scene in Infinity War was a direct reference to Captain Marvel. So something's got to give there. Anyway, like, I was always going to see it at some point, but I didn't know how excited I would be for it. And after this first real trailer, I think I actually have some a little bit of hype for it, which is probably a good thing. I should also give some shout outs to the network. Geek to Tooth this week, they did an episode on Superman that was really fascinating to listen to. Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea did an episode about when fans react negatively, which I know we've talked about in bits and pieces here and there, but they did a whole episode about it. So the network is always great. Go ahead, listen to them. I always do every week. And then, as always, if you want to support the podcast, even though sometimes it turns into a mini episode, you can go to patreon.com/geek2geekcast and support the show out there. And BJ will give you a real nice thank you next time he's on. He always does that part. I can't do it justice, otherwise I would try. That's probably it for the episode tonight. Again, just a Geek to Geek podcast mini tonight. But BJ is hoping to have his internet fixed and back next week. I know we want to talk about international travel, and then I still have a ton of things on my list of Geekery that we need to catch up on. So I kind of saved the topics that I know there's more conversation, more back and forth. So we'll make something out of that too. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. The email address, as always, is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussions on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast. And as BJ would always say, we're on Slack, we're on Discord, we're kind of everywhere these days. I blog at agreenmushroom.com. You can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter. That's probably it. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are two best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.